My name is Paisley Hernandez. At 34, I've built a successful career as a marketing executive, a role that fills me with pride. On the surface, my life seems perfect, but beneath it lies a complexity named Nathan. Lately, his actions have cast a shadow over my days, planting seeds of doubt. It started small. Nathan, once punctual, began coming home later, citing work pressures. But in my world, the corporate world, the truth isn't always as it seems. His excuses felt more like fabrications with every passing day. Then came the secretive phone calls. His voice dropped to a whisper, a tone of guarded secrecy. When I confronted him, his response was a feigned look of confusion, a performance that no longer convinced me. Things took a darker turn when I overheard fragments of a conversation. Susan, the plan. Paisley won't know. Susan, Nathan's sister, had always unsettled me. Her cold gaze and sharp tongue made her presence uncomfortable. Were they plotting something against me? Fear surged within me, but fear is never my choice. I decided to prepare, not to live in ignorance. Yet, to Nathan, I wore the mask of obliviousness. What do you mean? I'd ask innocently when he mentioned a trip I had no knowledge of. Inside, I was piecing together a puzzle I dreaded to complete. Our relationship wasn't always like this. We met at a company mixer, his charm and my ambition a perfect match. Our whirlwind romance, filled with dinners and moonlit walks, quickly turned into shared life and dreams. But as my career soared, his stagnated, and with that, his attitude shifted. The man I once loved began to fade, replaced by someone I hardly recognized. Confronting him wouldn't uncover the truth, not yet, so I observed. I waited, I planned. Nathan didn't realize it, but I wasn't a damsel in distress. I was a strategist, plotting my next move in a game he thought he controlled. In moments of solitude, I pondered how love could transform into a battlefield of egos and secrets, but there was no time for reflection. The game had begun, and I was ready to make my move. Nathan had once been the light in my life, but now, his presence was a constant source of unease. It wasn't always this way. When we first met, I was captivated by his charisma and easy laugh. In the early days, there was genuine admiration for my success in the corporate world, but as my career climbed, his stalled, the joy faded, replaced by resentment he could no longer hide. Then there was Susan. From the start, I sensed something cold in her eyes, an undercurrent of calculation behind every smile. When Nathan and I announced our engagement, her congratulations seemed laced with disdain, as if she couldn't fathom why her brother had chosen me. The turning point came one humid evening when Susan paid an unannounced visit. Her request was audacious, a loan of $6,000, for an urgent need she claimed. The way she demanded it, as if it were a family obligation, raised alarms in my mind. I agreed, but only with conditions, a legally binding promissory note. She balked at the idea of being bound by any legalities, but her desperation was clear, and she agreed, albeit reluctantly. That encounter gave me insight into the twisted dynamic between Nathan and Susan, a mixture of dependency and manipulation. It was then I realized whatever game they were playing, they had done so before, with rules they controlled. The weeks that followed blurred into late nights and early mornings as I immersed myself in work, seeking control in a world where everything else seemed to be slipping away. Meanwhile, Nathan's behavior became increasingly erratic, his mood swinging between brooding silence and bursts of anger. I knew I was playing a dangerous game, but backing down was never an option. Nathan and Susan may have been plotting in the shadows, but I was no novice at strategy. In the world of corporate marketing, anticipation and foresight are key, and I was ready to apply those skills in a way I hadn't imagined. Life, I realized, was like chess. Every move was critical, and sometimes, you had to sacrifice a pawn to capture the queen. One Thursday evening, as the city lights shimmered outside my office window, I realized the game I had unwittingly entered was at a pivotal point. The unraveling began that night, an evening that promised peace but delivered chaos. Nathan, more distant than ever, was like a shadow in our home, present, but emotionally absent. And that evening, I discovered the betrayal that confirmed all my darkest suspicions. I logged into our joint account to pay a few bills, a mundane task that turned into a devastating revelation. There it was, in stark black and white, a withdrawal of $99,000. My savings, earmarked for a future of stability in dreams, now gone. The confrontation that followed was bitter and illuminating. Nathan, caught off guard, shifted between defensiveness and guilt. His excuses were flimsy at best. This wasn't a rash decision. It was calculated, no doubt influenced by Susan. Sleep eluded me that night. The man I had once loved had become a stranger. His actions were a declaration of war, and in a war, just like in love, nothing is off limits. The next day, I made 2 calls. The first was to a divorce lawyer known for her ruthlessness and precision. The second was to a private investigator, a necessary ally for the battle that was about to unfold. If Nathan and Susan thought they were playing me, they had no idea who they were up against. I needed ammunition, my own missteps, a mirror to theirs. In the days that followed, my home became a battlefield, the air thick with unsaid words and veiled threats. Nathan's late-night whispers with Susan grew more frequent, their plans, whatever they were, seemingly nearing their endgame. But in the midst of this brewing storm, I found an unexpected ally. Beau, Susan's husband, called me out of the blue, his voice a mix of confusion and frustration, mirroring my own turmoil. "Is Susan there?" he asked, his simple question unraveling a flood of shared grievances. Beau had noticed the same changes in Susan, her secretive behavior, her sudden, frequent demands for money. It didn't take long before we pieced together the truth. Nathan and Susan weren't just siblings, they were partners in deceit. From that realization, we forged a plan born from both desperation and determination. If Nathan and Susan wanted a game, then we would give them one they'd never forget. Beau and I, united by the same betrayal, were about to turn the tables. The web of lies Nathan and Susan had spun was intricate, but in their arrogance, they overlooked one crucial factor: the resilience of those they thought they could manipulate. I met Beau in a quiet cafe, where our plan began to take shape. Beau, unassuming and quiet, had endured Susan's manipulative tactics for years. His story mirrored mine, love fading into bitterness, trust crumbling into betrayal. As we spoke, our alliance solidified, not just out of shared hardship, but mutual understanding. We discovered that Nathan and Susan were planning a lavish trip, funded by the money they'd stolen from us. The thought of them enjoying themselves at our expense fueled our resolve. We had to act, and fast. Our plan was simple, yet daring. We would let them go on their trip, but with a twist. Nathan and Susan would find their funds frozen, stranded far from their comforts, and forced to face the consequences of their greed. I switched Nathan's credit card with an expired gym membership card, a decoy he wouldn't recognize until it was too late. Beau made sure their travel funds would be mysteriously frozen once they arrived at their destination. As D-Day approached, I watched Nathan pack, feigning disinterest. He was giddy with excitement, blissfully unaware of the storm waiting for him. "You'll miss me," he said with a grin. "Immensely," I replied, my voice thick with sarcasm. He didn't even flinch. The day they left, I felt a strange mix of liberation and apprehension. Part of me wanted to confront Nathan, to unleash all the words I'd held back, but a stronger part of me knew that silence would do more damage than anything I could say. Beau and I kept in touch, updating each other on any developments. As expected, the first sign of trouble came shortly after their arrival. Nathan's frantic calls, filled with confusion and panic, were like music to my ears. "The card's not working," he yelled over the phone, his frustration unmistakable. I feigned concern, savoring the moment. "That's strange, maybe you should call the bank," I suggested, masking my delight. As the days passed, their situation worsened. Stranded without funds, Nathan and Susan's carefully crafted facade began to crumble. For the first time, they were exposed, vulnerable, and we had them right where we wanted them. Watching Nathan and Susan flounder in their own plot was satisfying, but it was also bittersweet. The end of my marriage, no matter how fractured it had become, was a change I couldn't undo. Beau kept me updated, managing to stay calm even as his own world fell apart. Our plan had worked better than we'd hoped. With their funds frozen and their credit cards declined, Nathan and Susan were stuck, forced to confront the consequences of their actions. Their calls grew more desperate. Nathan, who once commanded attention with his charm, was now reduced to pleading and threats. "Paisley, you need to send money. This isn't funny anymore," he demanded, his voice venomous, the mask of sweetness gone. But I didn't flinch. "I'm sorry, Nathan, but I can't help you," I said, my voice steady. His shock was palpable, even through the phone. For the first time in our marriage, I wasn't bending to his will. Meanwhile, Susan's facade of the loving sister and devoted wife crumbled. Beau sent me updates, detailing her unraveling, her manipulative nature laid bare for all to see. By the end of the week, Nathan and Susan had reached their breaking point. Stranded and humiliated, they had no choice but to rely on the generosity of strangers. It was a humbling experience for two people who had always looked down on others. When the day came for their return, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. I knew this wasn't the end, just the beginning of a new chapter. As I prepared for Nathan's return, I steeled myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. When Nathan finally walked through the door, his usual arrogance was gone. What replaced it was quiet defeat. His eyes searched mine, hoping to find the wife he once knew, but I wasn't that person anymore. Paisley, he began, but his words trailed off. I cut him off, my voice firm. Save it, Nathan, I know everything. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of truths long buried and illusions shattered. In that moment, I realized that this wasn't just a victory for me, it was my liberation from a life that no longer belonged to me. The game was over, and I had emerged, not just unscathed, but stronger. What followed was the aftermath, the reckoning, both legally and emotionally. The house that had once been filled with laughter and love now reverberated with the cold, hard truths of betrayal and deceit. Nathan's return sparked a series of confrontations, each one more heated than the last. Our conversations, once filled with dreams of the future, now became battlegrounds where words were wielded like weapons. Amidst the anger and the hurt, there was an undercurrent of something I hadn't expected: freedom. My regular meetings with the divorce attorney became a steady rhythm in my life. Each session was another step toward liberation from the toxic marriage that had once defined me. The attorney, sharp and determined, guided me through the maze of legal proceedings, her expertise empowering me at every turn. Meanwhile, Beau took the same path. He filed for divorce from Susan. What had begun as an alliance to confront shared betrayals blossomed into a true friendship. Grounded in mutual respect, we found solace in one another, sharing stories of our struggles and healing together from wounds both old and new. As the divorce process unfolded, the full extent of Nathan and Susan's deception came to light. Bank records, financial statements, and private investigator reports painted a damning picture of their betrayal. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but one that only strengthened my resolve to see this through. The day the divorce was finalized was filled with a complex mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and above all, a deep sense of closure. I walked into the courtroom as Nathan's wife, but I walked out as Paisley Hernandez, independent, strong, and free. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my work. It became my sanctuary, the place where I felt fully in control. My efforts did not go unnoticed, and soon I was offered a promotion, a recognition of my dedication and hard work. Life after the divorce became a journey of rediscovery. The world, once filtered through the lens of my marriage, now opened up to new possibilities. I found joy in the small moments: quiet evenings with a book, coffee dates with Beau, who had become a steady pillar of support and a dear friend. One evening, as I stood on my balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, I realized that this wasn't the end of my story, but the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where I was the author, and the possibilities stretched endlessly before me. The end of my marriage to Nathan had closed a difficult chapter, but it also marked the beginning of something new. The world, once confined by the limits of a strained relationship, now lay open before me, full of opportunities and fresh starts. In the months following the divorce, I evolved. I shed the remnants of a past that no longer defined me. My promotion at work was not just a career milestone, it was a testament to my resilience, a symbol of strength forged through adversity. Beau, too, embarked on his own journey of self-discovery. Our shared experiences had forged a deep bond, one that grew more profound each day. Our coffee meetings became a cherished routine, spaces where we could laugh, share, and heal. There was comfort in Beau's presence, a quiet understanding that transcended words. As we navigated our new realities, our friendship deepened, eventually blossoming into something more. It was a gradual shift, a natural progression from shared pain to shared joy. Beau was no longer just a friend, he had become my confidant, a partner in every sense of the word. One evening, as we walked along the riverside, the city lights reflecting off the water like stars in the night sky, Beau stopped and turned to me. "Paisley," he said, his voice a mixture of nervousness and sincerity. "These past months with you have been a journey I never expected, but I'm grateful for every single day. You've become so much more than a friend to me." His words mirrored my own feelings, sentiments I had long kept hidden in my heart. "Beau," I replied, my hand finding his, "I feel the same way. You've been my rock, my laughter in the darkness. I can't imagine my life without you." As we stood there, hand in hand, the world around us seemed to fade away. In that moment, there was only us, two people who had found solace and strength in one another. Life, I had come to realize, was an unpredictable journey, woven with threads of joy, pain, love, and loss. It was these very threads that gave it richness, depth, and color, turning it into a masterpiece of experiences. As I looked ahead, I saw a future full of hope and possibility, a future not defined by my past, but by the choices I made and the woman I had become. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face whatever it held, with Beau by my side.